Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. It's 10 a.m. on Monday, and we are broadcasting live from fabulous Las Vegas. You can watch our show every Monday, and we are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Facebook, the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. That is facebook.com/Activist Post. And we are streaming on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani. That's my Twitter and my Periscope as well. Something's going on with the Periscope right now where it's on Periscope, but it hasn't posted to Twitter, and it was last minute. So if somebody wants to go grab it and throw it up for everybody else to watch, that would be fantastic if you're watching now. I want to thank everybody who's been watching. I think we're on show 12 now. 12 weeks, and it's been 12 very exciting weeks, super interesting, and we have more great stuff for you today. Our guest today is Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast. I've really been looking forward to this interview. Super interesting guy, and he's all about self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. One of the most successful live casters on the internet, and I'm super stoked that he's going to be here. Also, we have more about the Russian hacking, this story that just simply won't go away, and some Bitcoin news, and also some information about a story that is near and dear to our hearts here in Nevada, the opening of Tesla's Gigafactory. And we're going to get into a little bit of a discussion about renewable energy and about the propaganda that's out there on either side of that issue. You know, we're very big on discussing energy and energy independence. And I thought today, with a guest who's so interested in self-sufficiency and being independent and what that means for freedom, that this was the perfect time to talk about that. And helping me do that, as always, my co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes.
Thank you, Vin.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Man,
it's been a good year so far, right?
It's been a very productive, very interesting year.
Yeah.
You know, I'm excited. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. You know, I had initially with this show today, because this week we had some things happen, and when they happened, I thought maybe I should discuss them. So I laid awake at night deciding if I was possibly going to change the show around. I was thinking yesterday as I put it together, but it was the Chicago kidnapping.
Yeah.
Right? We had the shooting at Fort Lauderdale. And, you know, I
saw a couple things on it.
Yeah, when all of these stories break, it seems like there's a huge divide in this country right now. That's the only thing I could say about this year that has been exposed more than anything. First, with the election, I think, you know, the election exposed it, but I think that these divides were already there.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that we're in a country where we have a pretty homogenous culture. Mm-hmm. We really don't have the sort of ethnic divides, the true ethnic divides that are in some places. Like, it's not like, you know, the Israeli-Palestinian thing, you know. It's not like the situation in Yugoslavia where they've, you know, you actually have like a Muslim population and a Christian population, and they have totally different histories and all of that.
Right.
We're dividing in this country on the dumbest of things, you know, the most insignificant differences, you know, the actual, like, skin color, but nothing else.
Football teams.
It literally is, it's tribalism.
Yeah.
Right? And tribalism is built in to people. And what I decided to do today instead is to address those issues in this way. And it's to say, you know, one of the biggest keys for authoritarians is fear.
Right.
That's the biggest tool that totalitarian governments and dictators and tyrants and all of these worst individuals in history, their biggest control mechanism is always fear. And interestingly, I think a lot of people understand that it's fear, but it's not the fear of them, right? So it's not like, Hitler or Stalin, they didn't fundamentally come into power and then maintain power by making people afraid of them.
Yeah.
Like the German people as a whole were not really afraid of Hitler. You know?
Interesting.
But what these people are good at doing is creating a fear of the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Gotcha.
They want you to fear some boogeyman, fear someone else. And they use that fear to justify the most terrible things that they could possibly do. And in the end, the mask is pulled off and you see, let's take an example of Hitler, right? Hitler did more to destroy Germany than any, as he was saying that there's a Jewish conspiracy to do. There was no German-speaking Jew, or even all of the German-speaking Jews together, had no chance of doing to Germany and destroying it and getting as many Germans killed and displaced and wounded as Hitler did. Same thing with the Bolsheviks and Lenin and Stalin and them creating a fear of the capitalists,
right,
or the monarchists, right?
It's interesting. I never really thought of it like that. I always thought to look at Hitler as this evil man, and he
wasn't to the Germans.
Yeah,
he created a boogeyman, right? Hitler was Times Man of the Year at a certain point,
right?
I mean, you go back and you watch like Leni Riefenstahl, The Triumph of the Will, the movie that she made right around the Olympics that were held in Berlin. And it really is. It's this triumphant picture of this guy, but you always have to be worried about people who want you to fear someone else.
Yeah.
And it seems both sides, right and left, are all about creating fear of the other. It's just who their other is, right? So today, we're going to look at some of that, how that plays out. And as we like to do, and I think we've been successful at doing on the show, we're going to use knowledge to destroy fear.
To break it down.
Right? Because like in 1984, read 1984, one of the slogans of the party is ignorance is strength. And it's the strength of the party. It truly is. Ignorance, the population being ignorant is the strength of the totalitarian dictator. Right? So we have a few stories. This first story that we're going to do, news story number 1. This is a story that I was hoping would finally go away. Last week we covered the grizzly. What was it called? Grizzly what? It was grizzly. I can't even remember it right now. It's so ridiculous. Grizzly Step. That's what it was. The Grizzly Step report about that came out, the hacking. I would suggest you can go to youtube.com/activistpost or youtube.com/Vin Armani. It's the most recent video. We've cut the excerpt of that. And we went and explained that the hacking that was done was definitely not done by a state actor. It was very sort of low rent. We walked through it. I explained it coming from my hacking background when I was a kid. And it's the type of thing that a 15 or 16-year-old hacker could accomplish. I thought that was all. It wasn't. This week, declassified report says Putin ordered, quote, effort to undermine faith in the U.S. election and help Trump. This is Washington Post, Christian. So, according to the Washington Post, Russia carried out a comprehensive cyber campaign to sabotage the U.S. presidential election, an operation that was ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin and ultimately sought to help elect Donald Trump. U.S. intelligence agencies concluded in a remarkably blunt assessment released Friday. Now, this is Washington Post, straight from Washington Post. The report depicts Russian interference as unprecedented in scale, saying that Moscow's role represented a significant escalation in directness, level of activity, and scope of effort beyond previous election-related espionage. Okay, so here's the thing. They have released yet another report. And they said, this is the declassified portion. And Washington Post, man, they pumped this up. They said, this is the declassified version of a highly classified report. And then they gave the link to the report. They're assuming ignorance is strength. So we can give the report. Nobody's going to click through and read the report. And then they put it in this weird little box, this weird little PDF box that was really hard to read, and it was really hard to scroll through on your phone. But we went ahead and got the PDF, and we're going to take a look at it right now. So this is the assessment here. It is the Intelligence Community Assessment. This is the cover. Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent U.S. Elections. And now on the YouTube and Facebook postings of this video, the link to this full PDF is there. It's only about 14 pages, and 3 or 4 of them are blank. But before we dig into this, on these things... The last pages are always very interesting. So I always go immediately to the last pages to see, because they usually have disclaimers in these little guys. So let's check out these excerpts, and we'll start with the last page first. So in the last page, they have a annex that says estimative language. All right? So what they're talking about here is when they use certain terms, what do those terms mean? So, and they say, the estimative language consists of 2 elements, judgments and the likelihood of developments or events occurring, and levels of confidence in the sources and analytical reasoning supporting the judgment. Excuse me, I'm having a tough time today. So they have this little chart, judgments of likelihood here. So it says this chart approximates how judgments of likelihood correlate with percentages. Unless otherwise stated, the intelligence community's judgment are not derived via statistical analysis. Phrases such as we judge and we assess, and terms such as probable and likely convey analytical assessment. So basically what they're saying is, when we say we assess, we guess, we think this. Right? Probable and likely, they're saying there's no real metric by it, but this is basically how we look at it. So what's used in here mainly is highly probable and very likely, which is about 80. They say, oh, that's about 80%. We're about 80% sure. And most importantly is at the end of this. So throughout this document, they say, we assess with high confidence, and there's one time where they say moderate confidence, and that's a very important time, and we've got it in here. So high confidence, if they say we assess with high confidence that, so high confidence, it says high confidence generally indicates that judgments are based on high quality information from multiple sources. High confidence in a judgment does not imply that the assessment is a fact or a certainty. Such judgments might be wrong. So they're like, yeah, we assess it with high confidence, but we could be wrong. Then you have moderate confidence, which is used one very important time in this document. Low confidence is never used. Moderate confidence, it says, generally means that the information is credibly sourced and plausible, but not of sufficient quality or corroborated sufficiently to warrant a higher level of confidence. So it's saying we've got a pretty credible source, and it's possible, but it's not really that good, and it's not corroborated with multiple sources, right? So that's what high confidence says, high quality information from multiple sources. So moderate confidence is just like, yeah, well, there's a source, and it's kind of a credible source, but it's not really sufficient quality. So let's take a look at some of the key parts of this document. I believe the first, so go to the next thing here. This is the major assessment. We assess Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election. Russia's goals were to undermine public faith in the U.S. democratic process, denigrate Secretary Clinton, and harm her electability and potential presidency. We further assess Putin and the Russian government developed a clear preference for President-elect Trump. We have high confidence in these judgments. So this is high confidence. They're saying there's multiple sources, it's credible, all right? Then it says, we also assess Putin and the Russian government aspired to help President-elect Trump's election chances, when possible, by discrediting Secretary Clinton and publicly contrasting her unfavorably to him. All three agencies agree with this judgment, and this is the most important part of this whole document, and they did not put it in bold like the rest. CIA and FBI have high confidence in this judgment. NSA has moderate confidence. Why that's important, that the NSA is sort of breaking with the CIA and FBI, is because the NSA's confidence, that's going to be about actual hacking. That's going to be evidence of the NSA-related stuff is the hacking stuff. So this is the NSA saying, yeah, we can't say with high confidence that the hacking element of this was ordered by the Russian government. We can't say that. So that makes you wonder, well, what is it that the FBI and CIA are really referencing here? That the Washington Post is going crazy about, oh, this just proves it. CIA and FBI, this proves it. This proves it. Okay, let's go to the next one here. So this is the scope of the report. All right? Goes down here and basically says, it covers the motivation and scope of Moscow's intentions regarding U.S. elections and Moscow's use of cyber tools and media campaigns to influence U.S. public opinion. Okay, the cyber tools is NSA, and the NSA says, well, we don't have high confidence, we only have moderate confidence, meaning not from multiple sources, meaning plausible, could happen. I mean, it's plausible, it's possible, but it's not high confidence. We don't have multiple sources. Right? So it says, so then you have media campaigns. So that must be what the FBI and CIA are talking about, the media campaigns. The assessment focuses on activities aimed at the 2016 U.S. presidential election and draws on our understanding of previous Russian influence operations. When we use the term we, it refers to an assessment by all three agencies. Then it says, this report is a declassified version of a highly classified assessment. The document's conclusions are identical to the highly classified assessment. So the conclusions are the same in both documents, classified and unclassified. But this, according to this document does not include the full supporting information, including specific intelligence on key elements of the influence campaign, which is really convenient. So basically, what the declassified version is the declassified version doesn't have any evidence. The declassified version is just like the classified version, except no evidence for you to see. We classified the evidence, right? I love that. So it could be 20 pages of evidence. It could be 1,000 pages of evidence. It could be one sentence of evidence. We're not going to tell you how much evidence we have. We're not going to tell you what the evidence is at all. What I like at the end of this is it says this. We did not make an assessment of the impact that Russian activities had on the outcome of the 2016 election. The U.S. intelligence community is charged with monitoring and assessing the intentions, capabilities, and actions of foreign actors. It does not analyze U.S. political processes or U.S. public opinion. So what they're basically saying here is, we assess that the Russians wanted to influence the election. We assess that Vladimir Putin was interested in and ordered actions to be taken that could affect the election. Did they affect the election? We don't know. We didn't really check to see if they affected the election. That's not our job. It's not our job to actually see if anything was swayed. It's just our job to see if some actions were taken. Okay. So the NSA has already said they only have moderate on the hacking, and we know what the hacking is. So what's in this document? I would suggest everybody go and check out this actual document. And you don't even need to read it all, but you can go and look at this part. There's 12 pages of content. 9 of those pages are about RT broadcasts. 9 of those pages are literally things like them saying, In April 2016, RT added a show called Breaking the Set, and they talked negatively about Secretary Clinton. Then, I'm serious. This is what's in this. 9 pages. There's one page that's about the hacking or leaks, WikiLeaks, and it's nothing. There's no information there. And then 9 pages. There's screenshots of RT shows where they're making a negative comment about Hillary Clinton. Fox News made more negative comments about Hillary Clinton than RT. But because, Putin clearly... So what this whole thing is about, what Washington Post is going crazy about is, Putin ordered RT to say bad things about Hillary Clinton. We don't know if it affected anything. And this is what's going on. This is what everybody's in an uproar about. This is what, Christian, you can pop back to us, dude. It's crazy to me, man. So what I've decided is that we are in the middle of an intelligence operation being launched against the U.S. public.
Pretty much. That's what it sounds like.
The U.S. government is launching, the Obama administration in particular, is launching an intelligence campaign against us.
That's crazy.
Against the U.S. citizenry. To demonize Russia and their whole... I'm like, really? CIA and FBI? Yeah. This is all you got? All you got is that RT said some bad things? It's fucking RT. We know it's Russian propaganda. Mm-hmm. We do the same thing with Voice of America.
Yeah.
The British do the same thing with BBC World News. It's the same thing. We know that it's slanted. Mm-hmm. We know that it's slanted towards Russia. Mm-hmm. This is not new. And it's like, this is a heavy campaign from Vladimir Putin. Really, Vladimir Putin tells him to talk shit on RT, and that's a heavy campaign. He's influencing the elections. What about Fox News, man? Mm-hmm. Fox News was talking shit on Hillary Clinton. Along with, this is it? So yeah. This is it. This is what they got.
It's very clear that they're just trying to stir up some commotion, and they're trying to cause a war.
I can only assume, though, now with this, it's reached a point where I have to believe that the Washington Post has been infiltrated by the CIA. Mm-hmm. I have to believe that the Washington Post is a CIA front organization. Mm-hmm. I really do believe that. That's where we're at this point. That it is, it's the propaganda arm of the U.S. government against us. Against us. And there was Obama put in an executive order allowing propaganda to happen against the U.S. against U.S. citizens. This is it. It's happening. And I don't know who all is involved in it, but it's definitely happening. We've got Speaker Paul Ryan, after Julian Assange came on and said on Fox News that it was an interview with Hannity. Julian Assange said, no, we didn't get the information from Russia. He's been saying he didn't get the information from Russia for a very, very long time. So we've got Paul Ryan here, who calls Assange a sycophant for Russia. Speaker Paul Ryan said early Wednesday, this is from The Hill, that WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is a sycophant for Russia. Quote, he leaks, he steals data, and compromises national security, Ryan told conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt. Julian Assange said a 14-year-old could have hacked Podesta. Why was DNC so careless? Also said Russians... this is Trump writing on Twitter. Julian Assange said a 14-year-old could have hacked Podesta. Why was DNC so careless? Also said Russians did not give him the info. That's what Trump wrote. The Russians didn't give him the info. Why? And why is him saying we didn't get the info from Russia, how does that make him a sycophant for Russia? We talked last week with James Corbett about what this whole Russian thing is about. And it's clear that there is a broader global move. Yeah. But I think ultimately what it's about is propaganda against the U.S., against us as citizens, making us scared of Russia, to enable them to have a more and more totalitarian state, to gain more and more power. It's like it's the it's Hitler's Reichstag fire. Like it's the same sort of situation. And what comes out this week because of all of this? You know, they were saying, oh, that the hacking, he hacked. So far, they said, oh, tried to hack the election machines. There's no proof of that. But we've got this from Associated Press. DHS designates election systems as critical infrastructure, provides federal help to secure it, citing increasingly sophisticated cyber bad actors, and an election infrastructure that's, quote, vital to our national interests. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson is designating U.S. election systems critical infrastructure, a move that provides more federal help for state and local governments to keep their election systems safe from tampering. Election infrastructure includes storage facilities, polling places, and vote tabulation locations, plus technology involved in the process, including voter registration databases, voting machines, and other systems used to manage the election process and report and display results. Okay, well, this seems like, okay, that's a good idea. Wrong. Because this has been managed up until now by the states. By each, it's a decentralized system, our voting system, right? So you have the state, the county, the city level. These are they all conduct sort of their own independent voting. They vote in different ways. That's why across the country you have some people use paper ballots, some use voting machines. There's 4 or 5 different types of voting machines. Some use punch cards. All of these differences is because it's a decentralized system that's designated to the states. But with Department of Homeland Security saying, no, it's critical infrastructure, this now is going to give them oversight to be able to have access to the storage facilities, the polling places, the vote tabulation locations, plus get involved with the actual code of the technology. Which, I mean, that's exactly what you don't want. You don't want, and again, it's one of these weird sorts of situations where the Democrats are doing this, Obama's doing this,
and that's what they're blaming Russia for. They're doing all this stuff.
Well, and they're going to have, in 4 years, they're going to have Trump, ostensibly, he's going to be running again. And it's going to be his Department of Homeland Security that's going to be able to have oversight and potentially meddle in, I mean, the temptation is too strong. The temptation is far too strong to meddle in an election for the most powerful position in the world if you can. I think anybody would, even if it's not Trump himself, someone within his organization or someone within the CIA or the FBI or one of the, the temptation is too strong to meddle in the election. And when you centralize it, the meddling it can occur way easier. It's a problem. But this is what happens with the boogeyman. You create a boogeyman, and the idea is you use the boogeyman to centralize power. When you see those two things coming together, historically, it's been very, very bad. Very bad things happen after that. So this is something that we're going to need to watch. This is something everybody needs to really be aware of. Centralization, we're already moving in a direction of decentralization in so many things. So many very important realms, and it's things that we talk about here. And decentralization is the key to freedom. It's also the key to prosperity. I mean, that's something I want to really talk with Jack Spirko about, is because he's generating his own food and his own energy. Things that you need that otherwise we go out as most urban dwellers, right? We rely upon these centralized, more and more centralized systems. And if one part of that system breaks down, like if the freeways in and out of Las Vegas, there's not that many entrances to the valley, right? But if something happened that trucks were just not able to get through, there's maybe a week's worth of food in the Las Vegas Valley.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, after a week, there's nothing. There's no food. There's no food. I mean, how long, the meat and produce that's on the shelves now, like, what's the expiration date on those right now? Maybe a week?
Maybe a week, yeah, I would say.
So, like, if you think about it, that's super fragile. That's super fragile, and that's scary in a lot of ways. But
And there's solutions for it.
there are solutions, and these are the things that we talk about. And when it comes to solutions for energy in particular, very important story this week.
Absolutely.
Gigafactory opening. That's number 2, news 2. So, this week, the Tesla Gigafactory opened in Reno. It seems like just yesterday that they had approved this thing. It's a huge, huge deal. This is a lithium-ion battery factory. Of course, for electric vehicles, batteries are the key. This has been since electric vehicles started. And there were electric vehicles as soon as there were automobiles. Some of the first cars were electric. But the biggest problem has been batteries, both having enough for range, being able to charge them quickly, being able to possibly change them out. Tesla has solved that in a big way. They've been very successful at it. Elon Musk, the founder of Tesla, very, very dedicated to bringing solar in particular, which we're going to talk about, but bringing this new electric revolution to bear. So, from Tesla's website, if you want to go Gigafactory here, battery cell production begins at the Gigafactory. Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy through increasingly affordable electric vehicles, in addition to renewable energy generation and storage. At the heart of these products are batteries. Today, at the Gigafactory, Tesla and Panasonic begin mass production of lithium-ion battery cells, which will be used in Tesla's energy storage products and Model 3. The high-performance cylindrical 2170 cell was jointly designed and engineered by Tesla and Panasonic to offer the best performance at the lowest production cost in an optimal form factor for both electric vehicles and energy products. So production of 2170 cells for qualification started in December, and today production begins on cells that will be used in Tesla's Powerwall 2 and PowerPack energy products. Model 3 cell production will follow in quarter 2, and by 2018 the Gigafactory will produce 35 gigawatt hours per year of lithium-ion battery cells, nearly as much as the rest of the entire world's battery production combined. So, dude, this factory, this huge factory, which is, I had read somewhere that it's actually the largest factory, single factory in the world of any kind of manufacturing. It's the largest factory in the world.
He's not playing.
He's not playing. They are going to double the total world production of lithium-ion batteries. So imagine, there's lithium-ion batteries in everything from your laptop to, I mean, almost every electronics. The rechargeable lithium-ion battery. I mean, that's it. That's the battery. That's what we're using to power the world right now. Anything portable, right? So they are going to double the current production of what's being produced in the world. They're going to double it.
Pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy. The key component is this Powerwall. This is what people are not really talking about, and we're going to cover it for sure this year. But the problem with solar, if you want to have solar, and people want to move to renewables, there's a move for that. There's I think a high demand, right? Especially among the environmental set. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that because it's about the collective versus the individual. And collective is not just group. So collectivists are not just people who are like the group is the most important. It's also things like the environment or the earth, right? That's a collectivist idea. Because one way you know when you're talking about collectivist ideas is if the thing that you're trying to protect or the thing that you're working towards or the thing that you want justice for is actually like undefinable. Like you can't put a box around it, right? Like the environment, the earth. What is the earth? Protect the earth. Like, well, what is the earth? Like, is it everything on the earth? Well, how could you not protecting anything on the earth then is protecting the environment. Like, whose environment? What environment? Like, there's an environment
So
inside here.
Yeah.
That's an environment. Is it my environment? Is it your environment? No, it's just like saying the proletariat, right? Or in Islam, the ummah, which is like all the Islamic people, the ummah. But then within Islam, they fight about, oh, you're not the real ummah, and you're not the real ummah, right? And they fight about that in the environmental movement too. So, well, that's not really the environment, and so you get to determine that's how collectivism works.
Yeah.
Right. Elon Musk, he wants to go to Mars. That's his whole thing. Read his biography. He's wanted to do this since a kid. That's fundamentally what all of this is about. All of it. The SpaceX, the electric vehicles, the solar power, the battery cells, it's all about Mars. That's what this whole thing is. He is building these companies and they're standalone companies, but really what he wants to do is he wants to go to Mars.
Colonize Mars.
He wants to colonize Mars. That's what he's dedicated his life to. Okay? So he could care really less about saving the Earth, but he recognizes, well, oil is not going to be, it's not going to work on Mars. It's going to need to be solar. And so he's developing this. And solar, it's going to need to be autonomous vehicles, right? So he's developing this. And it's going to need to be rockets and autonomous reusable rockets. So he's doing that with SpaceX. Now, when you talk about Elon Musk, one thing that comes up, and it even came up in our conversations, about this particular story, is that there is a lot of propaganda out there and growing propaganda, and I think it's going to keep happening. And it was something that also with this gigafactory, the incentives that he received to build the factory here in Nevada. There were several states that it was up for. The states were sort of wooing him with this gigafactory. It's not the only factory. It's not the only situation. States want him around, right? Everybody wants Elon Musk. Everybody wants Solar City. Everybody wants SpaceX to be there. Everybody wants a gigafactory to be built somewhere. The Tesla cars to be built there. Of course. I mean, it's jobs. It increases the tax base. Yep. It looks good for the state. It looks good for whatever governor, for his reelection. Oh, we brought Elon Musk. He's a rock star.
Yeah, he is.
He's a business rock star. I mean, he's like a Rockefeller or more than a Jobs, right? We haven't really seen a manufacturing giant in like 50, 60 years. This guy's huge. So, and he's super intelligent. But what I wanted to go through, because I think it's very, very important, is when I have discussions with people often, and we get into talk about taxation being theft, right? And the idea that I don't want to be stolen from, to have, of course, I want people to have health care. Of course I do. I don't want people to be sick. I want people to have enough food to eat. I want people to have enough housing. I want people to have enough energy. I want people to have all of these things, right? But I'm willing to give of my money, right, as much as I can to help others out, to help others who are close to me, to help others who are in need, who ask. I think of myself as a pretty generous person. Yeah. What I'm not willing to do is I'm not willing to steal from another person to help somebody else out.
Yep.
And that's often a discussion that comes up. And what comes up over and over and over again is this idea of corporate welfare, right? That's always what's sort of thrown back at me, right? When I say, I'm all for these things, I'm all for increasing people's overall welfare in the traditional sense of the word. I do not agree with stealing from somebody to give that to somebody else, because stealing is always immoral. It doesn't matter the reason why you're stealing is completely unimportant. It doesn't make it moral. Stealing is not made moral because you use the ill-gotten gains for a nice reason. Right. So one of the things that comes up with Elon Musk is this idea of corporate welfare. people talking about, oh, he's getting subsidies from the government. Well, the corporations are getting subsidies. Now, some are. Some are. But I want to get into what this really means. I want to do a little bit of a breakdown because I see with him moving forward, it's funny that the collectivists, who are the biggest advocates of taking money from the people in taxes and giving it to certain groups who are in need, are the ones who most hate that, oh, he's getting corporate welfare. But is he? So let's take a look. LA Times here. We've got, this is the headline. Elon Musk's growing empire is fueled by $4.9 billion in government subsidies. Now, Musk himself, you can see the related coverage there, an additional thing. He said, if I cared about subsidies, I would have entered the oil and gas industry. So, and we'll talk about that. When most people see this, so you see this and you say empire is fueled by $4.9 billion in government subsidies. What do you think? What do you think, Christian, when you see that? What is this saying?
To me, it's saying that they're kind of discrediting him. So to me, it's saying that it's not just him behind it; it's the government,
right? And that they're giving him money,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
I think to the average person, you look at this and you say, wow, the U.S. government gave $4.9 billion in tax money, because that's where it comes from, to Elon Musk. Now, I look at that and I'm like, well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with giving. We can't just be paying for Tesla.
Yeah.
But here's the question. Is it? This is what they say here. They say, Tesla Motors Inc., Solar City Corp., and Space Exploration Technologies Corp., known as SpaceX, together have benefited from an estimated $4.9 billion in government support, according to data compiled by The Times. The figure underscores a common theme running through his emerging empire, a public-private financing model underpinning long-shot startups. Then they go on to detail what this $4.9 billion is. And I find this so damn disingenuous. And I want to break this down because it's very, very important, okay? There is a huge difference and a very important difference between not taking someone's money and giving someone money. Mm-hmm. I think we all can understand that difference, right? If I walk up to you and I don't steal your money, if I don't steal $20 from you, that's very different than me walking up to you and handing you $20. Mm-hmm. Okay? Two very, very different ideas there.
Right.
All right? So let's do a little fact checking on this 4.9. Let's line item it. Okay, so the first thing that they bring up in LA Times, New York State is spending $750 million to build a solar panel factory in Buffalo for Solar City. The San Mateo, California-based company will lease the plant for $1 a year. It will not pay property taxes for a decade, which would otherwise total an estimated $260 million. So let's just stop on this for a second. This is the sentence from the LA Times article. I found it very strange. It says, New York State is spending $750 million to build a factory. Okay. Then Tesla is going to lease the plant for $1 a year. I said, okay. Then it says Tesla will not pay property taxes. And I was like, when you're the lessee, you don't pay the property taxes, first off. So I thought that was really weird. So I was like, they're saying that essentially $750 million is being given to Tesla. Now, is that actually what's happening? This was hard to go and find information on.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean, there's a lot of articles about this factory, but very little about the specifics, right? But I did find, if you just hit next here. So here's the deal. The state of New York is building a building, the $750 million. The state, this is from WIVB TV in Buffalo, where this factory is. The state will own the building and the equipment. So the state is building a state-owned facility. Mm-hmm. They own the equipment. And they're hoping more companies will share it with Solar City. So they're not just building it for Solar City. It's a whole facility. Solar City is just the background. Now, it's called Riverbend. It's being built by the state as part of the Buffalo Billion Initiative to create a state-of-the-art campus for high-tech and advanced manufacturing companies. State officials call it the crowning achievement of Governor Cuomo's Buffalo Billion Initiative. The other interesting thing about this is Solar City has agreed to move in. They've agreed to invest $50 billion in the area.
Wow.
Right? That's why they're getting the $1 lease. But what I find interesting about this is the building is owned and the equipment is all owned by the state. But the LA Times is mentioning something about property taxes. Since when did the government pay property taxes on buildings that it owns? Mm-hmm. What kind of craziness is that? What are you talking about? And they added it in. They added in the $260 million in property taxes in 10 years that's not being paid as though that was some sort of gift. But it's like, no matter what amount that they paid for the lease, they wouldn't pay property taxes. Nobody pays property taxes on a government building. What are you talking about? Next. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Okay, so this is the LA Times. The federal government also provides grants or tax credits to cover 30% of the cost of solar installations. Solar City reportedly received $497.5 million in direct grants from the Treasury Department. Since 2006, Solar City has installed systems for 217,000 customers, according to a corporate filing. If each paid the current average price for a residential system, about $23,000, the cost to the government would total about $1.5 billion, which would include the Treasury grants paid to Solar City. Okay, so here's where they get another $1.5 billion. Let's talk about this a little bit. The second part, which is really where they pull like $1 billion, right? So it's $1.5 billion, including the Treasury grant, so which was $500 million, right? So $1 billion of this is what they're saying is, and a lot of people know this. I know that it's true in California. I'm not sure if it's true in Nevada. It's true in quite a few other states that if you want to purchase home solar, the state will pay a portion of that. It's like a grant. But they pay it to the homeowner, and then the homeowner basically pays that to, it's a pass-through a little bit. It goes to whatever company installs the solar.
Yeah. So it goes to the homeowner, then to the company.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's subsidizing the homeowner who wants solar. It's the government subsidizing the homeowner. How they subsidize the homeowner is they pay for a portion of the cost of the install. To say that is a gift to Solar City is really disingenuous.
Yeah,
That's a gift to the homeowner. That's not corporate welfare. Mm-hmm. That's citizen welfare. That's subsidizing the citizen to make a green move. And this was voted on in all of these places by the collectivists. This was pushed by the environmentalists. They're the ones who push these things. So let's talk about this Treasury grant. So go next. The same sort of thing as with the Treasury grant, okay? So this was Section 1603 of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Tax Act. It was a green energy subsidy program created by Congress and signed into law as part of a 2009 stimulus package. The purpose of the payments made from Section 1603 program were to reimburse grant recipients for a portion of the costs they incurred to install certain types of energy systems at business locations. Payments were made after the energy systems were installed. So these payments were not even made to Solar City. These payments were made. So basically what it is, if you want to open up a solar plant or you're a business and you want to put solar to run your business, you apply for this grant. The Treasury Department will approve you for the grant. You pay for the system, and then the Treasury Department reimburses you, the business. Mm-hmm. How is that giving money to Solar City? Again, it's reimbursing. It's an incentive to try to get people to go to solar. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a government incentive. And I'm like, fine, if you don't want the government involved in doing these incentives, because that's all the government's got. It's got the power of the purse. It can either it's just like giving people tax credits, the child tax credit. That's to try to incentivize you to have kids. They're trying to do these incentives. So I'm like, look, if you don't want corporate welfare, collectivists, environmentalists, if you don't want businesses to be getting these sorts of grants, stop demanding them. Stop voting for them.
Right.
Stop voting for them. This is the environmental movement that asked for this.
Crazy.
Okay, so next. Then this one. This is the one close to us, of course. Nevada has agreed to provide Tesla with $1.3 billion in incentives to help build a massive battery factory near Reno. Now, here's where we get into incentives. And they think about, $1.3 billion in incentives. They must be giving them $1.3 billion, right? Nevada's giving $1.3 billion of tax money? Are they? Next. Here's the truth. This is from The Verge. 4 states, Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and Nevada, became finalists for the factory and were more than willing to accommodate Tesla by competing with other states' bids. So all the states were competing. Now, Tesla asked for $500 million up front in cash to move to Nevada, but was rebuffed by officials in the state. Tesla asked for money up front, and the state of Nevada said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. What did they give them? They gave them tax breaks. They said, come here and you won't have to pay taxes on this first $1.3 billion. That's just not taking money, not taking their money.
Yeah.
But that's just them not paying taxes. That's not to say that other businesses that pop up around it don't have to pay taxes. That's not to say that the employees aren't going to be paying all kinds of different taxes, right? They're bringing money into the state. That money's going to get taxed. They just don't have to pay it on that first $1.3 billion, but then they're going to be paying after that. And then it says, after the giant Tesla deal, the state offered a package equivalent to more than $330 million awarded to Faraday Future, a startup aiming to compete with Tesla. So this is the state saying, look, we will not charge you taxes if you will agree to come here. But Nevada's like that anyway. We don't have corporate income tax here. We don't have a state individual income tax, right? So does that mean that because California charges me on my income, but Nevada doesn't, that Nevada is subsidizing me somehow? Like, not taking someone's money is not the same as giving them money. They are two different concepts. Taxation is theft. Not stealing from somebody is not the same as giving them money. It's not charity because you did not mug somebody on the street. Like, you know what? Think about it. Like, that's really what they're trying to say.
Right.
That's really what the collectivists would like you to believe. The collectivists would like you to believe that that every time I pass somebody on the street and I don't mug them, that they should turn around to me and be like, thank you for giving me all the money in my wallet. It's ridiculous. Okay, let's go. Let's find the final. Oh no, there's actually 2 more. The Palo Alto company has collected more than $517 million from competing automakers by selling environmental credits. In a regulatory system pioneered by California and adopted by 9 other states, automakers must buy the credits if they fail to sell enough zero-emission cars to meet mandates. Okay, well, let's talk about these credits a little bit. While I talk about these, why don't you go ahead and get Jack Spirko? Go ahead and pop us to the next thing here. Okay, so here's the deal with these credits. There's this zero-emission vehicle program. This is from the Union of Concerned Scientists. Yet another program that was pushed by collectivists to try to incentivize electric and hybrid cars. The ZEV program is considered one of the nation's most forward-looking climate policies and was designed to result by 2025 in a minimum of 1.5 million zero-emission vehicle sales in California and an additional 1.5 million zero-emission vehicle sales for the Northeast. The zero-emission vehicle program assigns each automaker zero-emission vehicle credits, which represents the company's sales of electric cars and trucks, Automakers are then required to maintain zero-emission vehicle credits equal to a set percentage of non-electric sales. The credit requirement is 4.5% of sales in 2018, rising to 22% in 2025. Are we having problems with him, Christian? Okay, just try giving him a call on there. I'm sure he'll answer. So to explain what this is, Tesla makes all their cars are zero emission. Go ahead and mute him so I don't hear him. Okay, great. Tesla makes zero emission vehicles. All of their cars are zero emission. So for every car that they make, they get credits. And then the car makers that are not making zero emission vehicles are purchasing those credits because they have to have 4.5% of their total sort of sales. They have to have the credits proving that they did some zero-emission vehicles. So you can either build zero-emission vehicles and get the credits yourself, or you can buy the credits from somebody who makes zero-emission vehicles. Tesla makes all zero-emission vehicles, so every car that they make, they get the credits. It's really, really, really simple. So the other car makers are buying from them. This is not a handout from the government. Tesla didn't ask for this program to be created specifically for them. Elon Musk wants to make electric vehicles. And this program exists, and he gets credits that he can sell. He would be stupid. He'd be stupid not to do it because it's free money. But this is the same. He's going to get these same sorts of things. If you want to do this, the carbon credits, it's the same thing with the carbon credits. Right? Go ahead and maximize him over there, dude. We have one. Yeah, pop in full screen. There you go. We have one more of these, and then we're going to go to a break and come back with Jack Spirko on this. So, on a smaller scale, this is the only one, Christian. On a smaller scale, SpaceX, Musk's rocket company, it cut a deal for $20 million in economic development subsidies from Texas to construct a launch facility there. Now, SpaceX has gotten $5.5 billion in government contracts from NASA and the U.S. Air Force for launching payloads into space. Okay, so that we know that. So out of this whole thing, Texas, go to the next thing here. This one actually was. So Texas developed the Spaceport Trust Fund, and they funded it to the tune of $15 million. And they basically gave SpaceX this money to build a spaceport. So Christian, this is the sum total. We go from $4.9 billion, that's the LA Times number, to the real number that they listed of how much money have they actually received in terms of a handout from the government, $15 million from Texas to build a spaceport.
Quite a difference.
Little difference between 4.9 billion and 15 million, but that's what's so important to understand, is that this is how they get away from and get your mind in a place to not understand or believe that taxation is theft.
Yep. Interesting.
To say I didn't steal from you means I gave you money? It's absolutely crazy. But we're going to keep going through these. We're going to keep breaking them down. In terms of energy, keeping government out of it, I think most people would be happy with it on the renewable side. The real problem is the real subsidies are given to oil and gas, and that's what Musk said. The real subsidies is trillions of dollars in war. Trillions of dollars to make war, to secure oil fields, to secure gas fields, to secure pipeline routes. That's the subsidy. That's who's getting the subsidy. Smedley Butler wrote a book, I believe this is back in the 30s or 40s, called War is a Racket. He was a general, and he had been down with the Marines in Central America, securing Central America for the United Fruit Company. That's a subsidy.
Yep.
Right, but they don't talk about those as subsidies, right? Those are wars that we need to fight for freedom. Those are wars that we need to fight for democracy. Those are important. Those are not giveaways. Those are not corporate giveaways.
There's the boogeyman again.
There's the boogeyman. And we have, let's see what kind of time we got. Yeah, let's take a look at this baking soda story before we go. Just since we're talking about independence, sort of energy independence, we're talking about solutions. We're going to be talking about quite a few solutions with Jack Spirko coming up, our guest. This is an Indian chemical plant. I just found this cool, and I thought that it was kind of in the same vein. Indian chemical plant has figured out how to turn carbon emissions into baking soda. So this is a chemical plant in India that captures carbon emissions. It's going to be producing 60,000, or it's converting 60,000 tons of CO2 emissions into baking soda. It's carbon capture technology. And they're going carbon neutral. And the dude who did this, what's great is it says, what's remarkable about the Tuticorin installation is that it's running without subsidies from the government, suggesting the researchers have developed a profitable, practical system that could have the commercial potential to expand to other plants and industries. And the guy who runs it said, I'm a businessman. I never thought about saving the planet. But it just turns out that really great technology happens to be environmentally friendly because there isn't waste.
Yep.
The more efficient you are, the less waste there is. The less waste there is, the less damage you're doing to the environment. That's the solution. The solution is to allow the market to make these moves.
It's pretty cool.
And when the government's in it, when the government's making winners and losers, then that's when the problems really come in. So let's do this, dude. Let's go to a break because we're coming up on 11. I want to bring in Jack Spirko. Hopefully we can get a nice long interview because I got a lot of questions for this guy. A lot of things that I want to talk about. So let's go ahead. Let's go to break, and then we will be back with Jack Spirko. So, Christian, it's that time of year again.
It's getting cold, man.
It is getting cold. It is getting cold. But you know where it's not getting cold?
Acapulco?
That's right. And you know where we're going to be in February?
Acapulco?
Yep. Last week of February, Acapulco. I'm speaking down there this year.
It's going to be
So
awesome.
I know you're looking forward to seeing me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to broadcasting.
We're
going to do some interviews. Who are you interested in seeing down there?
Of course, Jeff Berwick.
Well, yeah, it's his conference, obviously.
Larkin Rose.
One of my favorite anarchists.
Adam Kokesh.
Well, Adam's always fun.
Yeah, we saw him here. Lauren Southern.
Hot. also brilliant. So I'm interested in seeing her.
Luke Rukowski.
Yeah, from We Are Change, of course.
And Roger Ver.
The Bitcoin Jesus.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
That should be awesome. Well, and don't leave out some friends of the show, like Activist Post contributor Derek Bros. He's going to be down there.
Great, yeah.
And Backwards is going to be performing. They're like the headlining
I can't wait
act.
for that.
Very cool, anarchist, kind of rap punk. Very, very cool. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm interested. And, you can't go wrong. Acapulco, 5-star hotel, Mundo Imperial. It's going to be super amazing. Drinks, sun, I'll be by the pool for sure. It's actually rented out the entire spot just for Acapulco.
That's incredible.
Well, it is the biggest anarchist conference in the world. Right? So 5-star hotel, Mundo Imperial in Acapulco.
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong, man. And if anybody wants to join us, and I hope that they do come and join us, go and visit anarchapulco.com. And when you buy your tickets, use the coupon code Armani, just like Vin Armani. Use the coupon code Armani, and they're going to get 10% off their tickets, Christian.
Save 10%. Can't go wrong.
Welcome back to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Facebook at the Facebook page of our wonderful content partner, Activist Post. That's facebook.com/Activist Post. And also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani. So I've been really looking forward to this interview. As people know, self-sufficiency, independence, very near and dear to my heart, and there are very few people who have as heavy a grasp and have shared as much as my guest today. My guest is Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vin. Thanks for having me on, man.
Hey. Just as a little introduction, Jack Spirko is one of the most successful lifecasters on the internet. His 5-day-a-week show, The Survival Podcast, is about managing his homestead in Texas, practical prepping, permaculture, and self-reliance. It receives a remarkable 150,000 downloads per day. That is remarkable. Jack is an inspiring example of how to monetize your passions. Besides the podcast, Jack operates an online membership community, teaches and speaks at live events, runs an online permaculture education business, and manages his small commercial duck egg farm with his wife. Jack Spirko, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So I'm super excited about this because you are one interesting guy and incredibly impressive in terms of what you do. Just for the people who aren't completely aware of you yet, and I'm sure after this that they will become subscribers and huge fans, can you let everybody know kind of the scope of the things that you've got going on at this moment?
It's pretty big. In fact, at some point, I've actually kind of pulled back a little bit because you can get overwhelmed with having you spread yourself too thin. But kind of what you said. My main core business is my podcast. It's the Survival Podcast at thesurvivalpodcast.com. I do a show every day, usually ranging about 2 hours. Of course, there's more time goes into it than that to produce it, so that takes up a great deal of my time. And that show started when I was still employed in the conventional sense, and to actually get that show off the ground, I did it in my car for 18 months. So I've kind of come from the school of thought that you can make excuses or results, but you can't do both. And I've used that to springboard some things. Some things are directly under kind of my management or what have you. But a lot of the other stuff is I've helped springboard other entrepreneurs. There's a guy named Patrick Rohrman with MT Knives. I really have no piece of his business whatsoever, but I helped him bring that to get himself out of that, workaday world and bring him back to full-time business of his own. Perma Ethos is our online permaculture school, and that's something that we've been running for about 3 years now. We launched that business. We sold like 1,300 PDCs, permaculture design courses, in like 6 hours, which brought a lot of capital to get that company off the ground. And we've done, just as much good as we can do wherever we can do it. I have my YouTube channel. Our little farm here, we run about 150 ducks. We have customers all over the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, from small retail customers. It kind of, I don't know, it's hard to kind of really get all out what we do every day.
So you have a agriculture business, if you will, that you've grown. Did you start out life? Is this a part of your background, being involved in sort of these types of activities, this type of business?
Not really. It's more along the lines of, I had the background of like being a gardener, homesteader type person. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. We hunted, we fished, we had gardens, we did preservation and stuff like that, but we were not farmers by any means. We didn't produce a product for sale. I discovered permaculture about 8 years ago and really grabbed onto it. And when we moved to this place here in Texas, I realized I really couldn't grow a lot of plant material because of the land. The land is really, really rough. We have a lot of our property about maybe 2 to 4 inches of soil, and then we hit like flat limestone bedrock. So the thought was we can bring animals in, and we can do things with animals. But what animal? It's only 3 acres. We started with chickens. We started to build a business on chickens, and we had no problem selling all our product, but we couldn't really make enough money to make it worth the work because everybody and their brother has chickens. So we kind of moved over almost by accident into ducks. And we found a really niche product. We sell our product for $8 a dozen. My wife keeps a waiting list, especially this time of year. We got into multiple restaurants, multiple farm-to-fork things. We just kind of figured it out as we went along, and we did it mainly so I don't have to mow this 3-acre property of mine. I think I've used my tractor like 3 times in 2 years because the ducks graze, and we control where they're grazing, when they're grazing. And if you think of rotational grazing with cattle, we just took that and downsized it. And we manage our ducks just like cattle. They go to different paddocks for different periods of time. so that they don't overgraze or overutilize one area. And if you think about 150 ducks, the weight comes out to about 3/4 of a cattle unit. So we manage it like we have one small Dexter cow, and they're not exactly the same, but it's one of those things. Once you figure out how to monetize something, then you can figure out how to make it more efficient.
So I guess now we're getting into some of the principles of permaculture. So for the people who don't know what permaculture is, can you just give us a quick little crash course in the fundamentals of permaculture?
Permaculture is a design science. I mean, that's really what it is above everything else. It gets a lot of traction because of the agricultural component. That is its roots, its genesis, where it started with David Holmgren and Bill Mollison, who were the founders of the movement back in the 70s. And but in the reality, again, it's more of a design science, and it is a design science based on function stacking, based on efficiency, and I like to say also based on troubleshooting. So what I mean by that is an average person might say, well, I'm going to put a garden in, and I'm going to put it on my back fence because it's out of the way, and there's a nice straight line there against the fence, and I can line it up in rows. And a permaculture person will design in where the garden goes on their land based on a system of zones. For instance, your zone 0 is your house. You're there all the time. Your zone 1 is basically you step outside of your house, you're in zone 1. And then as you move further out, and it's not like a linear thing where it's all the same size, like a bullseye, even though they diagram it that way. Because if you walk out to your mailbox every day, that whole peninsula would be zone 1 because you're on it every day.
Okay.
So that person's going to sit down that's designing that and say, well, my garden should be somewhere that I can see it, I can maintain it, I can make sure that if something's wrong, I correct it. It doesn't fall out of maintenance. And with that higher sophistication, they're going to be able to keep an eye on it, because that's something that requires daily maintenance. Where if you were doing something like your wood pile, well, you don't visit your wood pile every day, especially if you're in a southern climate. So that might be further out. Where your compost bin, you might want that to be somewhere that you're going to walk every day, where you're going to walk past it. And that way, the stuff that you're taking out to compost, it's not an extra thing. It's when I go to get the mail, I take the compost and I stop here, I drop it off, I pick the mail pick the mail up. As I'm coming back in, maybe I have a little herb garden along my walkway and I'm cutting my herbs as I come back in. Or in my case, where we have our ducks, we create things to be done along the pathway out to where the ducks get released every day, because we have to go do that anyway. And it's taking that, and you could take that into your business. You could take that into just about any industry. It's an intentional design. Instead of just saying, well, this is the way it's always been done, or this is the way it's done here, you sit down with a perspective of what are all the energy flows within this system, and how do I optimize those energy flows so that I end up with the best result. And then the troubleshooting comes in. No battle survives, battle plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Sure.
Right, so you put that garden out there, you start to see a problem. A permaculture principle is accept feedback. So we look at that feedback, and instead of saying, okay, well, we've got a pest, let's spray it and kill it, why is that pest there? What preys on that pest? How healthy is the soil? What can I do to alleviate that? Is that pest even a problem? It's
right.
Eating a little bit of the leaves. Well, what if the yield of the plant isn't the leaf, and it's not eating enough of the leaf to damage my yield or damage it significantly? We'll just leave it the hell alone, because sooner or later a predator will show up and consume it. Or if it's a significant problem, then I have to figure out, well, what is my corrective action?
See, hearing you say this, the term that immediately comes to my mind is environmental awareness. And yet, and I'm sure that you heard at least a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, in our culture as a whole, these concepts that you're talking about, especially for urban dwellers, are not the things that people are conscious of. They certainly should be, and I hope that in hearing this, they're starting to see how much of the world they're kind of ignoring. And when you hear the term environmental awareness, it tends to really mean something very different. It's people talking about some sort of environment, right? This kind of nebulous thing, whereas you're engaging with the real environment that you interact with as a human being, that you and your family interact with. You take your energy output into, you put your awareness into that, and then that creates the product. So was this sort of advanced design aspect a part of you growing up, or was this something that you learned along the way? How did you come across the idea of permaculture, and then how did you start to implement it?
So it might have had something to do with me growing up as an adult male, becoming a better adult male. It may have helped with that, but it definitely wasn't something I came across in my childhood. It was about 8-9 years ago when I started the Survival Podcast, and I had always had this bent towards self-sufficiency, self-reliance. Like I said, I came from a long line of homesteaders, coal miners, blue-collar people, hunters, fishermen. And when I started doing the Survival Podcast, one of my early listeners sent me this video, and it was by a guy named Jeff Lawton, who's become like a really close friend and mentor to me at this point. And he's probably the top permaculturist in the world right now. And it was just this little kind of hokey video they put together, and it was called Greening the Desert. And it was about this site in Jordan where they were, 10 feet below sea level. They get 6 inches of rain a year. Everybody's farming under plastic. It just looks like plain desert. And they went in, they did this installation, and they were able to transform this landscape in ways that nobody could have imagined. Like 6 months into the project, they get a call, and the guy's like, "We have a problem." He said, "Well, what's the problem?" He says, "There's some sort of fungus here, and we don't know what to do about it." And when they finally got pictures of it, it was a mushroom.
Oh.
And the reason it was a problem is no one in living history in that place had ever seen a mushroom growing before. But the humidity rise and the organic matter was such that there were mushrooms growing there now.
Wow.
And I'd been running my little garden at my old place in Arlington, Texas, and I'd been having some problems lately and all. And I went, no, wait a minute. If this guy can do this in frickin' Jordan, right, then I have no excuse, and I owe it to myself to learn more about this. So then I found a video by Bill Mollison, one of the founders and Jeff's main teacher, and it was called "In Grave Danger of Failing Food," and that led me to Bill Mollison's Global Gardener. And my problem with it at first was, and it's true, we do attract a certain amount of the kind of the epitome and the worst of the social justice warrior types, and we call rainbow hippies, because I have no problem with hippies. Right?
I love that. I love that.
The rainbow hippie doesn't contribute; he just drains. Everybody else. So I was like, I don't know if this is really something I can get my hands on. And I'm listening to this old man, and he's like, he goes, so I was, cutting trees down for a living, and I got this job eventually at a university, and I learned to teach, and then I got flipped out, and I ran out in the woods and lived there for 5 years on my own and learned all this stuff. And then I said to myself, you can either stay here and live in your little self-made utopia, or I can go back and fight the bastards. And I decided right then I was going to go back and fight the bastards. So that old curmudgeon, I was like right there, okay, I can get behind this. And then it just became, I'm one of these people, I read a book, you could give me a test on it 3 years from now, and I would pass the test. So I just became like an information sponge on permaculture, getting every bit of it I could. And that led me to this concept of it's a much more holistic solution. And I started to realize I was already building my podcast based on the permaculture design science and principles. But once I realized it, then I was able to get intentional with it. And I basically built this whole business. And again, something started in my car. I had like a $19 Sony MP3 recorder and an old Plantronics headset. And I was able to build this business into, this is what I do now, which is, it's the real American dream, being able to be in charge of your own stuff. And it's based on those design principles.
I love it. Now, in terms of the Survival Podcast, I mean, you are absolutely prolific in terms of the amount of content that you put out. It's pretty amazing. What is sort of the feedback loop for you in terms of your process? Do you plan out the things that you are going to do based on what you want to, I'm saying on your own homestead and in your own life, based on the things that you want to present in the podcast? Or is it kind of the other way around, that as you start doing this podcast on a daily basis, you start to realize the things that you need to do? Is that, which one of those sort of more represents it?
It's more that the activity required here often will drive some level of the content on the show. Okay. I mean, when I got quail about 2 years ago, we did a whole series on quail. When I rediscovered making mead and started making, my small batch meads like this stuff here, you can't find in a store, right?
Nice.
To circumvent the sin taxes. We did a whole bunch on mead and cider. So all of those things kind of trickle into the show. But over the years, we matured as our show, and I was listening to one of your archives from, I think, your most recent show, and you were saying you feel like you're really hitting your stride. And there is a certain point as you're doing a show that you develop a formula. And again, for the first 18 months, sitting in my car, it had to be just me. I couldn't do guests.
Right.
I couldn't do call-ins. I couldn't do anything like that. Once I was able to take it full time, then I kind of got into more of a structure. And then at this point, I've got a real structure. So what I mean by that, and this has been for a couple of years now, every Monday I do a listener feedback show. So the content is provided for that show by the listeners. Now, it can get driven by what I'm doing, because when I'm putting out YouTube videos and content on things, that creates more questions. And if I'm excited about it, I like to talk about it because it's more interesting when you're excited what you're talking about. But that, like a show today, the story you just had on about the Indian plant making baking soda out of carbon emissions,
Right.
that's on my lineup today too.
Awesome.
But I also have a question on, like, is the 6.5 Grendel a decent cartridge for deer hunting? Yeah,
Awesome.
and I have a feedback from a listener whose son is working in the solar industry, and the automation he's put in has gotten 30% of the engineers in his company laid off, and what's the impact of automation? So it gets really varied on a Monday. Tuesday, I do a standalone show, and a lot of times that is driven by what's going on in my life, and that's Just Jack show, we call them. Wednesdays, I do an interview. Thursdays, I do a listener call show. So I have an 800 number. I don't do a live stream like you do. I don't do video because it's more work.
Sure.
And to do 5 video shows a week, I'd need a staff to do.
Yeah, it would be really tough.
So on Thursdays when I do my call-in shows, all I have is I have an 800 number, and I use technology. People call in, they leave a message. I get an email with an MP3 attached, or they can go to the site and I use a technology called SpeakPipe, where they can just hit record and go from there. And I just pick, and it's great because like if you ever listen to like AM radio and you hear somebody call in, you go, how'd this person get past the screener? I just like get him off the air. If I get one of those, I just don't use that. So I pull about 10 calls a week into that, and then on Friday, and this has become a big hit, I have what I call an expert council. I have 14 people that are just spot on experts in their field. I get questions every month for them. They all get 2 a month. And so each Friday, like, it alternates, so like half on one week and then half on the other. They were turning into like 4-hour shows otherwise. So that gives us great variety. And then I feel blessed after doing this for eight plus years now and building the following I have the greatest research staff on planet Earth. The only problem I have is I get more than I can sort through. But I have a procedure for people to submit material to me, which is basically I have them put TSPC for my show in the subject line so that I can filter all that out. And that, I'll take my weekend sometime for a couple hours and I'll go through and figure out, well, what do I want to do this week? But to be completely honest, on like my standalone shows, there's been days that I woke up and my wife goes, and this is like 8 o'clock, I'm like, what are you going to do a show about today? I don't know. And like, 2 o'clock, I'm hitting publish. And it just seems to work because you don't run out of things to talk about when it comes to building a self-sufficient lifestyle, because everything impacts it. We could have a show one day about building a business. There's nothing you can do for yourself to make yourself more self-sufficient in today's world than building a successful, sustainable business.
Agreed. So I do want to talk about these two aspects. And it's great that you brought that up, because this was exactly my next question. You really cover these two sides of when people think about self-sufficiency. I think that those are the two sides. The one is I want to provide all of, or as many of the resources as I possibly can in terms of food, energy, security, all of these things. And the other side is I want to provide as much resources as I possibly can by building a sustainable business that is then going to generate some income for me to be able to get those resources. You've combined the two of them together. What I want to talk with you about first is, what do you think are the most important on the first side, the sort of, I don't know if we necessarily want to call it prepping, but I mean, people who are thinking that the worst case scenario, we talked a little earlier on the show about, the food supply lines and whatnot. If those weren't there, being able to provide for themselves, what do you feel is, this is my first question, and then we'll move about the business, but
Sure.
What do you feel is the number one most important thing that people should either be focused on or they should be doing that they're not in terms of self-sufficiency / prepping?
Well, I think it's more the thought process than the thing.
Okay.
So what I've taught from the very beginning, like when you come from, because every once in a while I'll do a back to basics show for new people, is that when most people get into preparedness or prepping, survivalism, call it whatever you want, something scares the hell out of them. They see the debt clock for the first time in their life, and they learn what unfunded liability is, and oh my God, they go running to their spouse. We're going to all be bankrupt in a week or something like that. And they get hysterical. They listen to Alex Jones or something like that, and they think they're going to be thrown in a FEMA camp tomorrow morning or whatever because, I don't know, they hacked into their church's database and they're coming to get all the Christians or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that none of those things have any merit in some nefarious world, but those aren't the things that we need to be thinking about getting off the ground. So what I tell people to do is focus on disaster probability. And when you do that, everything gets really clear. So disaster probability works like this. The less number of people affected by an individual disaster, the higher probability that you will be the one to experience, or you'll experience it, let's say, in the next 30 days or the next year.
Okay.
So if you were still employed in a job, or I was still employed in a job, we're not going to fire ourselves. That's a good case for self-sufficiency. But still were. If I get fired or you get fired, it's a disaster, especially if we're living like most Americans.
Interesting.
But it doesn't affect your neighbor at all.
Right.
Well, how many people have you known that have been fired in their life?
Lots.
Lots, right?
Yeah.
And then if we look at individual, like, weather disasters, like, there's a ton of people affected every year by simple things like a strong storm or a tornado or what have you.
Sure.
And we've all experienced that, but
Yes.
that's not what makes people go out and buy four pallets of MREs or something stupid like that. So as we move out from personal to local to state to nation to global, we should start with our own individual preparedness needs. So there's a lot of financial preparedness in that, and boring stuff like good insurance. And it doesn't sell, G. Gordon Liddy can't sell you gold with it.
Right.
Right. So they want to focus on like the dollar melting down or something. And I have real fear about the economic output or outlook of this country long term. But I have a greater concern with my own personal needs. So then we start to say, well, all of these things that can interrupt food, right? Well, a storm can do that. It doesn't have to be a trucker strike that shuts it down for the country. You can be cut off for a couple of weeks. I have people that were listeners in Tennessee a few years ago with a big ice storm. They couldn't get out or get anybody in for 21 days.
Sure.
Most people couldn't handle that, especially in freezing temperatures.
Sure.
So what we do is we start tailoring our preparedness to our individual needs. And we start doing simple things like, so you don't have to go buy survival food. Look at your pantry, look what you eat. Keep a little food diary, a little journal on your tabletop. Every time you eat something, write it down. When you eat it again, don't write it down. Put a check mark next to it. And if it's storable, if it's something that won't go bad, or there's room in the chill chest, the freezer for it, that's the stuff you buy more of. And the next time you go to the store, buy 2 instead of 1.
Right.
And then do it again, and do it again, until you build up about 2 weeks to 4 weeks or a month of food sustainability. Water's simple. I don't drink soda or commercial iced teas or things like that because I think it's bad for you. But somebody who does, and they have really great containers.
Sure.
Water is essentially free. Fill them up. The shelf life of water is infinite. The only reason the water bottles have a freaking expiration date on them is because New Jersey passed a law that said all foodstuffs must have an expiration date. So the water companies just went, well, we're not going to make New Jersey water, right? Because nobody would buy that. I mean, so water stores infinitely. If you have extra space in your freezer, fill those bottles up, put them in your freezer. That creates a thermal battery that when your freezer goes down during a power outage, the stuff that's in there is going to last longer. You can get really simple, low-tech, like if the power goes out, you got that stuff in your freezer, it's going to last quite a while anyway before you have to worry about it. Just throw a couple blankets over your refrigerator and your freezer when the power goes off. That'll buy you 3-4 hours of time of insulation, right, until the power comes back on. And start thinking that way. Like another thing we teach people to do is you go on Amazon, you buy a little, like a $50 800-watt power inverter that clamps on the batteries in your car.
Right.
Well, I need a generator. Well, you have a $30,000 generator sitting in your driveway.
You sure do, yep.
It's made by either Ford or Toyota or whoever.
That's right.
Get that generator and a couple extension cords, and no, you can't run everything in your house, but you can run your refrigerator for a couple hours. Then you can put the TV on for an hour. You can run lights. You can recharge batteries. Keep a whole bunch of rechargeable batteries around. And start building that basic preparedness up. Have a blackout kit. Everybody likes to talk about bug out kits. I think that's important too. But a blackout kit, how often have your power ever gone out, Vin?
Of course.
I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
Right? So what we have these little power failure lights through the house, not some expensive solar array backup. And if the power goes out, these lights come on. Now we can see where we're going. We have everything we need for a blackout in one location in a bin so we can get there with the power failure lights. Then we get that stuff out and we can make an assessment. Is this going to be like a couple hour thing, well, then we'll just, hook up the backup power, watch TV, and wait for it to pass. If it's going to be an ordeal, then we'll pull the generator out, plug that into the house, and I can run my whole house off my generator. But I'm not going to do that right away, and you shouldn't wait till you can do that to do something, because that $50 inverter, and a real smart thing, take a piece of 2x12 and bolt it to it, so when you set it up on the hood of your car, that motor's running, it doesn't fall down in there and go flying out. And right? And I didn't learn that by doing it, but I've learned it by having reports of other people doing it. And just that basic approach to let's firm up the stuff that could go wrong. So also, I know it's kind of boring, but save some of your freaking money, right? Don't be sure that paycheck's going to be there next week because some engineer may engineer you out of your engineering job you thought you would never lose.
Right.
Again, I'm reporting on that today. And so that's kind of that basic starting point, and it's that mentality, and there's dozens and dozens of steps in there. But if you come from that mentality and sit down and assess what are my basic weaknesses, what are my regional threats, like I don't know where, I think you live in Vegas.
You were in Vegas, yeah.
Yes, you're not worried about tornadoes.
No, but flash floods, I mean, we have floods,
Yeah, floods, right?
That's just about it, though.
So, but you think of, well, what's, okay, and then your other thing is, if you do have a supply line shut down, there's not a lot locally as far as resources.
Oh, so no, we're in a lot of trouble. Trouble.
You got to think of maybe a little bit more on the resource side, because if something goes on like that, we have a little bit more that we can do here, but we don't have anywhere near the local resources that a lot of places like in the eastern United States, the Eastern Woods do.
Sure.
I mean, you could put me in the Eastern Woods and one of those outdoor shows and come back in a week and I'll gain weight.
Right.
I mean,
love it.
Put me in the jungle and I'll be fat. I'll need cardiac support when you come pick me up. But you put me out in the Texas desert, I can get by, but it's not happy.
Right.
It's not a happy time at all.
Right. So that's first off, awesome. I love the mental shift, the how to think, as opposed to necessarily what you should be, this thing, that changing how you think, these solutions sort of start to become self-evident. I love that. On the business side, you've certainly approached your business life in a different way than a lot of people. I'm sure that mindset goes into it as well. And you help other people in terms of starting businesses. It's something Christian and I we spent several hours talking, because we're both entrepreneurs, and we spent several hours talking about sort of the mindset of starting certain businesses, and how we determine whether something is a good idea or not. I'm interested, as people start to approach some of the things that you're doing and they think, hey, maybe I enjoy this. This is maybe something I might want to get into in terms of a business. Do you have any sort of framework or like a little bit of a rubric to say, yes, maybe you enjoy doing this. What are the things that people should be looking for that would indicate, hey, maybe this is a good business opportunity for you as well?
Well, that's a pretty big question. I'm a big believer from the school of thought of following your passion, and it seems like the business advisors of the world have split into two worlds, one that bashes that and then the other one that champions that. And the reason I believe that is a good course is that you'll work harder at something you love. Now, of course, there's a litmus test to it. If you don't follow the rules of business, if you don't offer a practical solution, if you're not good at what you do, there's a million different things that can make you fail, and then following it just because it's your passion without addressing those, that's a mistake. And that's what I think a lot of the bashers are really talking about. I mean, one of the all-time bashers of this is Mark Cuban, which is preposterous on its face.
Right.
Mark Cuban was a customer of mine back in my days of being a wage slave when I was a salesman for a structured cabling company. And so I know a little bit more of the history of AudioNet that became Broadcast, which he sold and got out of than I think most people would. So the whole reason he started AudioNet is he's driving around in his car one day and he loves basketball. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to listen to Indiana's basketball games. He couldn't get it on the radio. So he comes up with this idea, I'll take this newfangled internet thing so I can listen to basketball, and that grows into this multi-billion-dollar concern.
Right.
And people can say whatever they want about how bad Yahoo screwed it up, but back when that company was running, I mean, it was stacked wall to wall with salespeople every day, and what they were doing is putting radio stations online.
Right.
But that all started because he followed his passion of basketball.
Right.
And now he's up there today telling people don't follow your passion. It's a little disingenuous, but I get the point he's trying to make. So you have to balance those two, and then you also have to decide, well, what kind of business do you want? So a good friend of mine named Brian Black runs a website called ITS Tactical. And he started about a year after I did, almost identical. And ironically, like, his wife was able to quit her job and go to work with him like exactly 1 year after my wife did the same thing. So we're kind of following this the same way. And I said to him one day, I said, you'll have a bigger company than I do in 5 years. And he does today. And he said, really, why? I said, because I don't want one. I don't want employees.
Right.
Right? I don't want employees.
Right.
I don't want to have 15 people I'm managing again like I used to. I've done that already. I'm burned out on it. So I built what I would call a lifestyle business. My business fits into my lifestyle, and while I won't build it into a multi-million-dollar concern, because I have no employees, I get to keep everything except what the government takes and the basic expenses. So you have to decide, like, do you want a lifestyle business, or do you want kind of a small concern that maybe has a couple employees, maybe some contractors, or do you want to build a really big business? In my past, one of the businesses I was a partner in, we had 50 direct employees, but we had thousands of contract technology employees across the world. And it made me realize I don't ever want to do that again. But we need people to do that. And the challenges are harder today, a big part because of just the healthcare thing alone. I mean, that's...
Sure.
I got a guy right now trying to hire someone to basically be like a custodian at a federal courthouse as a contractor, making about 3 times what he could make doing any other job there, and they can't get anybody because they'll lose their cheap health insurance and have to buy their own as a contractor, and they're back to a net zero. And so I mean, that's made it more challenging. So I saw all of this stuff coming as I moved into this, survival podcast thing, and realized, well, it doesn't matter. Since I own my company, none of these regulations about what have to be provided to an employee apply to an officer, an owner, a partner. So even if I was going to ever do something with somebody again, well, I'd bring them in as some type of a partner into a separate company, and that's what I do, because I'm not paying somebody's health insurance. And when I got to pay more for their health insurance, but I don't want the hassle of managing somebody. So a big part of you figuring out what you want to do with the business is, well, what we used to use in sales is called the magic wand question. You tell a client, forget budget. This pencils down magic wand. If you could wave it and make your network look like whatever you wanted it to, what would your network look like? And then you try to tailor it to as best you can to fit that desire. So I think that's what you have to do, is say to yourself, well, if my business was, if the way I define success, if it was successful enough that would double what I need to live my life, what would it look like? How would it function? And then try to build into it and understand it's not going to work out perfect. You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have things, and then a big thing is, don't leave money on the table. I look at so many like small entrepreneurs starting up websites and stuff and go, do you hate money? Is that what your problem is? You hate money. I'm on your site for 15 minutes trying to figure out how to buy your product.
Right.
I can't find a place to buy it. Or I get there and you got this really great article and I think it's awesome, but it's, from 5 years ago or whatever, and maybe I'm never going to see your site again, and there's nothing there compelling me to subscribe or, sign up for your Facebook fan page or whatever. Like, whatever you're doing, don't leave money on the table. And I don't care if you want a big, giant, brick and mortar concern, if you want to do that today and age, or a small business, the internet and the social media and all that stuff has got to be part of it. Don't leave money on the table, and be careful who you align with. I had a lot, you can imagine in my industry, I had a lot of like the fear salespepeople, especially if it's not successful. Oh, well, basically saying, we'd like to sponsor your show. And I'm like, I've got all my sponsorships sold out. It's been sold out for 2 years. And they're like, we'll pay double to get rid of one. Yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. These are guys that stuck with me from the beginning. My main revenue model is members anyway. I'm not doing that. But some of them were like, the solar generator people. Like, you're going to be able to run your refrigerator. Yeah, for 15 freaking minutes. I'm not selling that. I'm the person mad at me, and rightfully so.
I love that. It's interesting. I'm kind of the same. I'm the same way. I have a development background, and I've never enjoyed. I think I'm a pretty good leader, but I really don't enjoy managing large groups of people, and so I've tried to keep my own businesses pretty lean as well. One of the things, and it's something that's come up in this conversation, and I wanted to talk with you a little bit about it. You don't have to go too far into it because I know it's some of the stuff that you're covering today, but it's something that we cover extensively on this show, and that is automation. And we talk about things that are happening with automation. And while it's happening on this sort of macro level, I think a lot of people who are new entrepreneurs and coming into the game, I mean, a lot of the things that we do with the show, we can do with 2 people because we've automated a lot of the script scripting and whatnot. So it's not just robots. There's a lot of that coming around. I know that you started an aquaponics system where you're at, and I know that these are the types of new technologies that even on a small level are making automation more a part of people's lives. But I do want to talk with you a little bit about, because I know it's something that you're thinking about. Everybody that comes on who is thinking about it, I love talking with them about it. And particularly with sort of on the survival podcast side, that you're thinking about what are these outcomes, people getting fired and whatnot. Where do you see automation? How big of a problem? We talk about it a lot here. I think it is a blind spot that people are absolutely not seeing of what is coming in the future. Can you help the audience out and with a little bit of your own insight on where you think automation is going and sort of what type of a challenge it's going to present to us in the near, mid, or long term, in your opinion?
Okay, well, I've been kind of sounding this alarm for like two and a half years. And when I first kind of really started to bring it to the attention of my own audience was like, you're way overplaying this. I heard this when I was a kid in school. We would all have vertical takeoff cars by the year 2000 and stuff like that. And this time is no different. Well, this time is different. This time's different because the technology to make the promises come true not only is actually here and available, it's already being deployed.
Right.
Autonomous vehicles. They had I'm sure you saw the first ever successful commercial autonomous delivery was beer in Colorado or something like that, right? And Uber got kicked out of San Francisco. See, it's over. No, it's not over. They got kicked out because they wouldn't play ball. There's other autonomous vehicles running around San Francisco right now.
Yep.
When you think of the transportation industry alone, it is just a massive industry with a massive number of people, and a lot of those people are employed in a way where they're making a good salary, and there's not a lot of other things, and I'm not putting anybody down, but unless they go out and improve their skill set or their education, there's no job that pays what they're getting paid for them to go to. Right? I would have a hard time backing up a big rig, so I'm not picking on the guy that drives a big rig, but once you learn to do that, your education has pretty much reached its pinnacle of what you need to continue to do your job. Get in the truck, go from New York to California, and go back. Right. And don't hit anybody. Fill out your mileage log. Stop at the weigh station and dump your stuff here and get another load.
Right.
And if that's all you know, and you lose that job, where are you going to go? And then you start thinking about, well, if you have people losing their jobs in all of these different sectors at the same time, then you're into like a double conundrum that we always get into during a recession or a depression, where when the technology recession hit, we had actually leaned our company out already, and when we wanted to hire someone, we had our pick. We could get the cream of the crop on a discount because they couldn't find a job. Well, imagine that happening in 20, 30, 40, 50 industries at the same time. And it has to happen, and yet the gatekeepers on some level have to throttle it back a little bit, because if they don't, they're going to cut their nose off to spite their face. And what I mean by that is Company A automates. Company B says, we're not going to do that. We don't want to get rid of our people. Well, Company A starts clobbering Company B in the market on cost and value. Company B now has to automate.
Yep.
But both of them, if they're part of this massive automation wave, automate too fast, and we have 20, 30, 40% unemployment, who are you going to sell all the stuff to?
Right. Exactly.
And that's the big issue. One of the other companies I worked with in the past did optimization services for cellular networks. And we had a software product that go and put 300 or 400 high-paid engineers out of work. It was hard to sell because you're selling it to the people
who are going to be out of work.
Right. And even when you got high enough in the food chain, the guy at the top of that food chain in organizations like that, usually they're not the type of organizations, they'll hire a CEO or a CTO from outside.
Sure.
But they're like top engineers and stuff. They all come from within. So they know all those people that are down in that rank system that are going to lose their jobs. So they'll give you pushback, and they'll roadblock you to the CTO and what have you. But once you actually get in the door at that C level and you say, look, here's the software, here's what it does, here it works, here's the bottom line number, even that guy might have a conscience. He might even feel bad about it, but sooner or later, the global market force is going to demand that he become more competitive. It's one of the great things about the free market, but then we have to figure out, well, what does the other side of that look like? And what I'm telling people right now is, I don't have a silver bullet. I don't have any job you can go into where you won't lose it. And I think that's something people need to realize. It doesn't matter what you do. Anesthesiologists, lawyers, like everybody's on the chopping block. Landscapers, Husqvarna has released this week big to-do about their new automated lawnmower, and they want to go up to commercial sizes of it, right? So just think of how many people push a lawnmower for a living. And I'm not one of these people like told my kids and stuff like, you better go to college or you're gonna have some stupid job like that. If you like that, that's great. I mean, I love Mike Rowe. I think he's awesome. There's a real wonderful thing about honest physical labor and work, especially if you get a good return on it. But a lot of people that are in that industry or those industries like that, like once you're replaced, where do you go?
Where do you go? Right.
What do you do?
Right.
So what I think people have to do is you have to stay eyes wide open in this, and you have to stay adaptable. And every time you see something come out, the question you should be asking isn't, how will this affect me? How might this threaten me? Rather, what is the opportunity that's represented in this one thing?
I like that.
And if you could figure that out, and that's changing your mindset about everything. Like, so I'm a big believer too. Like, if you say like, I wish I could have a car like that, I wish I could afford it. You should be saying, well, how can I afford it?
Right.
Right. I wish I had a business that was able to do this. Well, how can I have a business?
Right.
And that's how you have to approach this automation thing, because the reality is we don't know, and the automation that's coming is inevitable, but what it looks like is unknown. And what I mean by that is, the internet was inevitable. It was going to happen.
Right.
Video services on the internet were inevitable.
Sure.
YouTube was not inevitable.
Good point.
We don't know what the top end or the winner is going to look like, and then all the little stragglers around that are like, they play second fiddle to YouTube, like Vimeo and what have you. They weren't inevitable either. Right. The smartphone was inevitable, but the iPhone wasn't.
Right.
Right. So somebody has to latch on to, well, what can I do? And the answer, I can't give you like ideas, because it's all dependent on what you're capable of and what you can figure out and what you can adapt to. But the people, I really believe the people that pay attention and constantly think to themselves, what can I do to maximize this for myself? And it's not like you're going to figure something out for everything, but one or two or three things, niches within niches, they're going to have an incredible opportunity over the next 20 years. And there's going to have to be some rectification. I don't know if the government will go full fiat and do what do they call it,
universal income or whatever. Yeah.
Income. I don't know if they're going to do that. Under the current economic system, it's not doable mathematically.
Right. But
changing monetary systems is something this country has never had a problem doing. Not without problems, but I mean, they're always willing to do it if it benefits them. So I don't know if something like that's going to happen, or some kind of guaranteed employment, or if it's going to be a situation where people just have to figure it out long term. But some way we'll adapt to this. It won't end the world, but it is going to adversely affect employment. And the people that say, well, we'll create new jobs, when you look at what's coming, mathematically speaking, there is absolutely no way that this wave is going to create more than it takes. It's not possible.
It's just not possible. It's a great points. I completely agree with you. I'm glad that there are people sounding the alarm, and I think more and more people are going to start paying attention to it. One thing that is obviously never going to go out of fashion is you're going to need to eat, and you're going to need energy, you're going to need a place to live. It's this sort of holistic approach that I really appreciate that you bring to the game. So I really would advise people, and I'm sure now after listening to this that people are interested to hear more of you, and so they should be going to thesurvivalpodcast.com, checking out the wonderful shows that you're doing every day. I really appreciate you coming on, Jack Spirko. I hope that we can do this again in the future when there are some updates. We didn't get a chance to talk about all of the individual systems, but I know that this is something my audience is super interested in, so I'd love to have you back on. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Definitely check out the site. We're doing episode 1927 today.
Woo!
Just to give people an idea. There is a catalog there, all the shows you can listen to all the way back. And I'd love to come back on. Maybe someday we can talk about converting people to anarchism and voluntarism.
There you go. There you go. That'll be great. That'll be our next one. So we'll definitely have you back on. Jack Spirko, The Survival Podcast. Thank you very much. Awesome. Awesome. I always love talking about that stuff. Christian. A lot of great info.
That was amazing.
You know, the wonderful thing about it is here's a guy who has made a lot of money helping people to prep for things that are potential in the future, but such a solutions-oriented guy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, my mind was definitely moving.
That's what I know you're like in the business stuff, right? Yeah, he's really, really good. I find that this is going to be the answer. This is going to be the answer for the future. Like when we talk about this automation thing, it is serious.
Yeah.
It is a coming tsunami that people are not really paying attention to. But what I think it's going to bring out, and we've talked about this, I think people are going to go deeper into themselves. I think people are going to get much more spiritual. And I do think that entrepreneurship, I think that is the key. People having small businesses themselves, going back to how it used to be. I think people are going to stop being employees.
Yep.
You know?
Well, yeah, it's almost natural. So think about like everybody's got their own path or their own passion or whatever it is, their own thumbprint on whatever it is that they do. You know, and a lot of people are overlooking that because of a job, because of the way society is right now. You know, and if that was actually, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago, if that was actually taken from them and they were put in the position to where they had to find that thing, the world would be a lot different.
Yeah, it's going to be a real change in our identities. I think we're coming right up on time. So, dude, thank you for today.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just say goodbye to the people here.
Awesome.
So, today, I hope that we accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and that is to break apart some fear that you might have of this new boogeyman that is Russia, some fear that you might have of the evil corporations and the rise of a certain tycoon, some fear of the things that may be coming in the future. There's a lot of hope. And the key is that the hope is really inside of you. As our guest, Jack Spirko, spoke about, the chances for you to be self-sufficient, whether that's generating your own food, your own energy, being prepared for disasters, or whether that represents you starting a business that's going to support you, is inside of you. To think that finding your passion, going out and finding your passion in these coming times, and being ready when this societal change happens that's coming from automation and that's coming from debt and that's coming from things that are happening in the financial world and just a change, just a shift in human consciousness, that finding your passion is actually going to be the key to your survival. Finding your passion is not just about doing something that you like to do in your spare time. Finding your passion is doing that thing that you would be happy to do for free and that you would be happy to do all day, and then turning that into a means to support yourself and support your family, whether that's with the business or whether that's with creating the resources yourself and creating abundance in your world with things like permaculture and aquaponics or energy generation. To where the passion that you have, that thing that is your art, can also become your life. And it's something that I've done in my life, and Christian does in his life, Jack Spirko does in his life. It can be done. It's there. And that's where the hope is. That little space around you, the real environment that you should be concerned with. The environment inside your body and inside your mind. And just outside of you, that's the place to protect. That's the place to grow. And that's what's going to make you free. So that's our show for today. You can check out our archives at youtube.com/Vin Armani or youtube.com/activistpost. And you can see, not see, but you can listen to our podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, vinarmani.com/iTunes, vinarmani.com/Stitcher. We will be back next Monday at 10 a.m. we have another great show, a guest that I know you're absolutely going to love. And until then, stay free.